Hey everybody, welcome to Spill the Novelty, where three girlies shout into the void about our latest book, hot takes, and obsessions. I'm Abby,
I'm Maddie.
And I'm Kaylee.
and this week we're spilling the tea about The Familiar by Lee Bardugo. So if you're into sickly, brooding immortals like us, don't ask why, don't look into it too much. Or if you want to dip into the world of Lee Bardugo, here's the tea.
All right. So we don't normally talk about the setting of books because this isn't like an AP Lit class or anything, but I think it is really important for this book. So the book is set in Madrid, Spain during the Spanish Inquisition, which if you're not really like into history, that was basically like a time frame. I think it was like a few hundred years where a group of like Spanish noble judges tried people who were accused of heresy. And I think this book probably takes place in like the 15 or 1600s, but I don't think it's ever like specified. But it's like in the middle of the Spanish Inquisition. So yeah. So personally, I thought the setting was like really cool. I actually think it was like one of the better parts of this book. And I loved all of the little like Spanish tidbits because kind of a flex, but I minored in Spanish in undergrad. So I really loved all of the little Spanish parts personally, and the
Brag
culture.
about it, Kaylee.
I just liked it, and I like the culture. I like the history. Like I'm not really into historical fiction personally, but this book was obviously more fiction than historical.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like throwing history down our throats.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I agree. I it felt like a very unique setting to me for like a fantasy-ish novel. And so it was definitely interesting. I will say I definitely had trouble with how much Spanish was just in like regular body copy, and I think a lot of it was defined, but like I was not quick enough to memorize all of the words and like their meanings, that when it showed up like just in plain text later, I knew what we were talking about. They would like refer to place names that way. Sometimes she would just straight up just start like yapping in Spanish, and I'm like, I don't know what we're saying, girly pop. Like, I'm just along for the ride. But there was enough context that like it wasn't that bad for me to like still follow. I did kind of like, this is like a personal thing, the degree to which religion played a role in everything was surprising to me, because I didn't really realize, I'm not a history girl, I didn't really realize like how tied in everything was, which sounds stupid because we all know about Martin Luther, but like it just was like more than I expected. And then I also was like struggling a little bit with how it played into the magic system, and because like there were people from different religions doing stuff, and then there was like all this, and I was like, we're in Madrid, it's a real place. Like it was a little bit for me to like catch up with in the beginning of the book, but like once I got past it, it was fine. It just was like an adjustment period.
Yeah, I think for the religious trauma girlies, this one it can hit, but it's only because I was familiar with this history for that exact reason. But something that'd been cool, my like every few episode Babel plug. I did love how Babel uses like footnotes and stuff like that. So it's not, I don't think it's Lee Bardugo or any author's job to feed me that information, but I would love some like maybe more plugs throughout. That could have been cool to see. Or, footnotes can also be a really fun way to both for like actual history and to add some more of the fiction element to it. Like give me some fictional, not true footnotes too, but to kind of immerse me into it. But that might have also felt weird because this isn't really an academia thing the way the Babel was. But anyway, point being, no, I thought it was cool. I did like too that I feel like we got a lot of interesting stuff in the physical setting as well. Just like I could really see when Lucia would, go about her day, walking to get water or whatever, or in the actual like these beautiful buildings and stuff that we were in. So yeah, the setting both physically and culturally I thought was really interesting. I need to read the end of like the acknowledgments that Lee Bardugo has, because I think that has some more of the historical context, and I didn't get around to that.
It's not a ton.
But
It's like a page.
not a
It
ton.
basically
Okay.
just says that Perez was a real person and he escaped capture a bunch. And the thought is that there was like an external force allowing him to do that, like God's will or whatever you want to call it. And that, is it Luciana? The girl that they talk about all the time that had the visions that got locked up?
Yes.
She was also
yeah.
real. That's basically all it says. Those two characters were real,
Based
and it
on
gives
reality.
like a little bit of history on like
that's cool.
how, like what actually happened. But it's pretty short. Cool. It's like a paragraph each.
Okay.
I will say one thing that I found interesting that you brought up, Abby, was that you wanted, even with disregarding the footnote bit, because I think footnotes would have been cool too, but you wanted a little bit more like background and like that sort of thing. That's interesting that you say that, because I feel like the complete opposite. Like I feel like the beginning of the story was so slow, and I think if she added any more of that, this would have been a DNF for me, because like it was just,
that's a good point.
It was, I say this, I wrote this down like later in our note sheet, but I feel like this book would have been better if it was like the first book of a trilogy or something, because it was like there was so much in the beginning, like so much to world build and that sort of thing. And there was too much of that for a standalone. Like we did not need all that stuff.
Yeah, you know? No, that's true. As I think about it, I'm like, I would love some extra info, but no, you bring up good points. Like, where would that fit into the story? That'd be tough.
And like,
that'd be tough.
I say this is kind of, it's so common now that it's almost cliche, but I almost want the little like pre-chapter snippets of history that we get in a lot of books, where it's like a couple sentences out of like some in-lore history book that like preps you for something that you're going to read in the chapter. Even though it's happens so much in fantasy books and whatever, I find it to be a really useful way, rather than sifting through like 7 paragraphs of like description or dialogue of like a character kind of info dumping. And I feel like that's a lot what the beginning was for me, and I just like blacked out a lot because, again, I'm not like a history girl, so I really just want to know what I need to know. And the other thing is like, this is set in like the real world, and so as a like someone who lives in the real world, you don't have to explain so much to me. Like, that's the benefit of setting it up in Madrid. Yes, there's things about this that are fictional, obviously. You don't need to spend so much time explaining like the real world to me. You just need to focus on the stuff you've added. And I don't feel like she took as much advantage of that. Like, I feel like we got too much actual like prose in the body explaining the real world to me than like a need to know, okay, now we're hopping into like the fiction that I've added to this, which is this, that, and the other, you know?
Yeah, like there were points where she would focus on like the specific types of dresses all of the women wore, and we went through like every single woman and what type of dress she was wearing, and obviously that was reflective of like the culture during this period, and I get that. But like if I really wanted to know about the dresses they were wearing, I could Google that. I could be like, what types of dresses worn in Madrid, Spain in the 1500s? You know what I mean? So yeah, I completely agree with you.
That's a good point. I could definitely see what you're saying, Maddie, of floating it up to the top, like the little, and that would work so well for like religious documents or decrees or, you know, whatever. So that'd be an interesting way of using that space for sure. Yeah.
It's almost like, as an author, those are things you should research and you should know, but you have to be very honest about what you actually have to include. Like, I think that was a bit that she wrote in during research so that she understood it. And it probably should have been cut out in editing because it's not actually that important. Nobody cares what the characters are wearing because, let's be honest, like, as soon as I got done reading that paragraph, I swapped them back into, like, whatever vague garment, like, my brain autofills when I'm thinking about a scene. You know, like, it's just not important.
Yeah. Right. Like, you care to the extent that it impacts Valentina's, like, particularly like her kind of view of money and power, and like she's, I think, especially as it's used, like, oh, fine dresses is just a sign of wealth, and so to that extent it matters, but we don't necessarily need the detailed breakdown. So interesting setting, to say the least, for sure. So we have this really cool backdrop. And our kind of main character is Lucia, who is this scullery maid who has no family. She was orphaned and sent to work for a woman named Valentina. And on top of that, just normal things, just girly things. She has magical powers, so that's pretty cool.
Just girly things.
Just girly things. So she seems like this just normal maid, but she can sing or think a phrase in a mix of languages like Spanish, Latin, Hebrew, and magical things will happen. And her Valentina soon kind of figures this out. So talking about Lucia, I think she was definitely a really interesting main character to follow. Her having this sort of secret and deeper sense of this kind of, I think, kind of like rage or just need to let this power out, especially because we find out that it has a lot of roots in her family and her understanding of family, some grief there as well. So I think that she was a really interesting character to follow. She evolves a lot, I think, throughout the book as she's able to really express that power and let it out and is no longer just stuck being a maid and having to hide these things. And yeah, a lot of really interesting dynamics with her and her various relationships with family, her relationship to Valentina and how that kind of evolves, and her relationship as a maid, and of course, as we'll get into later, her other relationships. But yeah, very interesting. I think she was an interesting character to follow.
I didn't feel like that. Shocking. I liked the idea of Lucia. Like, I thought she had a lot of potential, and there were certain elements that I liked about her. Like, I liked that she wasn't like grossly, disgustingly moral. Like, after she kills the man in like this incident that happens, and it's like really crazy and gory and like probably really traumatic for someone who hasn't killed someone before, I would assume. She recovers really quickly. Like, she doesn't spend the typical like heroine like long time frame being like super depressed over it like they usually are. I'm thinking of like ACOTAR and books like that. Like,
yeah,
she doesn't like mope over it and say like, oh, I'm a horrible person. She just moves on from it. And like, I like that about her. But I don't know, there were other things I didn't like. She just like, she fell really flat to me. Like, she was reduced to her powers and her motivations, and she didn't have any emotions throughout it. Like, I think it was the narration, obviously, because this is from like I think it's like a third person omniscient or something point of view, and we just didn't hear about like what she was feeling or thinking through a lot of these things. It was just like she did the motions, and I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I do know what you're saying, but I don't agree.
okay.
Which is shocker. Like, oh, this never happens. I felt like, and like disclaimer, I typically write from third person limited, so it may be easier for me to recognize some things just because like I'm used to having to do the like author tricks to like make third person limited feel this way. So but yeah, like I felt like we got a lot of her emotions. We get a lot of like internal thinking from her throughout the prose, like her walking through scenarios. Like it's a relatively dialogue light book, honestly. Like if you look at the chapters and you're actually scanning, like there's not a lot of chitter chatter through most of the book. It's a lot of like, Lucia did this and thinks this and this and this happened to her and da 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 da. So I felt like we did get a lot of her emotions. And when we switched POVs, I do wish they would have been labeled at the top of the chapter, but it was pretty easy for me to recognize that we were no longer like in Lucia's head. Like we were now in Santangel's head, or we were in Valentina's head, like randomly, or like whatever, you know? So for me, there was enough of like, I don't know, opinion within the language that I could recognize like when the third person limited shifted. But I can also see how that would be really difficult to follow, especially because we do get so many POVs in this book. But I don't know. For me, Lucia, I think she did have a lot of personality. Like, I don't think she fell flat for me. I like the stereotypical cliche, like, she has to hide her wit and she has to like watch what she says. Like I just like that trope, and I like that she was actually witty, like she was actually clever when it came to it. I liked that she was super ambitious and she almost got a bit power hungry, and like she says multiple times her motivation throughout the book doesn't really change. She's like, I want money, I want comfort, I want to not have to worry about washing the floors. And like I like that it didn't I like that Lee Bardugo didn't feel the need to make that more of like a quote unquote respectable motivation, because like let's be real, bro, like she's been a scullery maid her whole life. Money would feel like the most important thing to her. Like she just wants to not have to slave away all her life. And so I like that it didn't get turned into like, I want to fight for my people. Like there's that in there, but like when she's asked what she wants, she's like, bro, I just want to be able to like live my life. So she felt very real to me in that way, and like believable.
I agree that the motivations were strong. Like, yeah, no, I totally agree with that part. I just don't think, I don't know. I just, the emotions just weren't there, I guess. I don't know. And I just didn't really care. I didn't feel enough to care about her, like what her outcome was, I guess. Like, I was hoping for the best kind of, but like if she died, I would have been like, shrug, okay. I don't know.
Well, I think we always love here on this pod, we support women's rights. But we also support women's wrongs, more importantly. And I would have loved to see her actually go ham. Now, granted, I understand why, like she couldn't. I think that would maybe help with like maybe the emotional thing we're talking about here. Because I think that, what you're talking about, Maddie, I also like that trope of she has to bite her tongue. She has to kind of hold it in. So I think there's a lot of things bubbling, right? And you see it come out with like her wit with like Sant Hell when she's like comfortable and stuff like that. But I would have liked to seen her like intentionally snap, not like just when because that scene where she kills that guy, I'll talk about this later, was like one of my favorites in the book, and it's a very memorable fantasy scene for me because of how gory and just like wild it is. I want to see a little bit more of the snap, but I get why she couldn't. You know, she's being intentional. But I did want to see it.
Right. Like she should have been pushed further, because she has breaking points throughout the book, or points where okay, so like one of my favorite like tiny moments is when Victor, who's like someone we'll talk about a little bit later, but he's basically like this really powerful noble she ends up having to like answer to, and she's very comfortable in that people always assume that she's stupid, and so she can kind of get away with saying things in a certain way that she's like she like gets a little W, but only she knows, right? And in one of her first interactions with Victor, someone tells her like, oh, thank Victor for his generosity, and she says, oh, I'm so thankful to God for selfless men being generous. And it's just her way of like getting a little one up, right? She's not thanking Victor for his generosity because he's not being generous. She's rephrasing it in a way that she feels like she won. And he kind of takes her to the side and he's like, I'm not as stupid as everyone else that you deal with in your daily life, and I know exactly what you're doing. And you get this moment where she's like, oh, like she finally has someone that like is listening to what she's saying, and she has to be a little bit more careful. And I really liked those moments, and I would have liked to see them pushed further, because she's very impertinent throughout the book, and she gets a little too much forgiveness, I think, for that in the setting that we're in the time that we're in, you know?
Yeah.
Or doesn't she get, I think he, or I can't remember if it was him, slaps her or something in the book. Do you remember
eventually,
that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it's like, I know that, and she's so used to holding everything in because she has to. She's used to the mistreatment that she deals with as a maid and everything. But like, there's some of these moments where I'm like, okay, even if she doesn't do something that's like gonna like kill him on the spot, you know, I would love to see some more of that vengefulness come in, like in subtle ways, like something happening to him later or something that he can't necessarily trace back to her, but he also knows is her. Yeah. Just some more maybe vengeful moments, because she earned it, first of all, but also second of all, I think it'd be interesting to kind of.
Yeah. And I would have liked to see that
feminine rage,
both directions too. Like more female rage from her 100%. And then also like this dude that we're dealing with is a literal psychopath. Like he slapped her, and it was a very like the scene was good. Like I was eating it up, but also I was like, let's be real. Like Victor's not going to stop at a slap. She only needs her vocal cords to compete. if he broke a bone, if he, like, it's not that I wanted something bad to happen to her, but I was like, this is our villain, you know, like, he's scary, he's violent, he like loves to hurt people, like, he's not going to stop at a slap when she actively disrespected him, and there are a lot of things that he could do that wouldn't like be visible, just to like harm her physically, that he does to like Santon Hell all the time. So it's like I wanted everyone to be pushed a little bit further.
No, I agree. I wanted the stakes to be higher, and I felt that a lot with the torture scene. And I'm not saying like
it was short.
I don't. It sounds bad to say like I wanted her to be tortured more, but that's not really what I mean. I guess I wanted the stakes to be higher. I wanted to feel like she might die. Like I wanted. But instead, it was like she was waterboarded, which that'd be terrible. I wouldn't be able to handle being. I wouldn't be able to handle being waterboarded either. But it's a book, and like she was waterboarded for like one time.
Yeah.
And then she just quits and confesses, and there's no like bones breaking. There's no like chopping off fingers. Like it's like I don't know. The stakes just weren't high enough. Is what I'm saying.
My babble, Abby, is Iron Flame, the torture scene. It's really long. It feels exhausting. It's really engaging, or at least it was for me, because you see so much suffering, and you have Violet like flipping in and out of consciousness. It's long, and I feel like it was shortened so much in this book that you lose some of the impact. Like it was almost only used as a vessel so that she knew that her aunt had drowned. And so
and that was kind of interesting,
which was a cool parallel, but like more. Give me more.
Well, and I think too, to your point about it wanting to see more people maybe snap, or like if let's say she were to really be deeply harmed during torture, be on the verge of death, something like that, it's not obviously she's the one suffering, but if one of them hurt her in that process, like this is a big enough moment where I feel like if they accidentally harmed her during that and they don't actually get any confession out of her, they don't, like, that's a mistake on their end too. Like everyone, this is super tense, and they make a mistake in how they handle her, then they make a bigger mistake than just hurting her too, you know? So the stakes are high enough where we could afford to have a little bit more moments of like someone snapping for sure, I think. But
yeah. And talking about people who snap, we have
who slay, even
who slay, who kill without a second thought. We have to talk about Santon Hell. Okay. Santon Hell is an immortal servant who he's lived for hundreds of years. I think it's like 5 centuries, he says towards the end of the book.
Oh, I didn't even realize that. That's crazy.
Yeah, 5 centuries. I know about my man. Don't worry. I'll send you the notes later. He has like a very interesting backstory where he was like super lucky, and it's implied that it was kind of like this magical gift of luck, but it was subtle enough that people didn't really realize. But he ends up making a deal where he trades his gift of luck for immortality because he's just really scared to die ever. And he gets betrayed by like his closest friend, who is, what is his name? It's like Tiptoe. I don't remember. Anyways, it doesn't matter.
We'll call him Timu.
And so basically he has to serve that family line. Kaylee, say it for me.
De Paredes.
I said it wrong the whole time I was reading the book, and so it's hard for me to unlearn this habit. But he has to serve the family line forever, and that's where Victor comes in, our villain that we mentioned earlier. He's a servant to Victor. And he kind of becomes the trainer of magic for Lucia. He like helps her work through her magic and figure out how to use it and hone it. And he's hot, and he starts out he's like very sickly, and like her using her magic feeds him, and then he gets hotter as the days goes on. Yeah, I would like die for him or whatever. I cannot emphasize enough how much bitching and whining I was doing about this book. I was ready to DNF. I thought it was so boring. And then it was like chapter 10. He enters, and I was like, oh, a sickly man? I'm in. I've never been more in. Honestly, you should have started with that because I'm in. Love him. He's great.
Yeah. He kind of, and so shout out to my mom if my mom listens to this. Hi, Mom. So my mom reads all this stuff because my mom's the goat, and she read it before me. And the first thing she said when I finished the book was, "So how'd you feel about him like ending up being hot?" And yeah,
he was hot.
Yeah, I was here for it.
Yeah,
he was hot from day one. Like we knew he was sitting in that little corner, and we were like, oh,
in his little cloak.
And his little cloak,
being
and we're
mysterious.
like, oh, right, the mysterious one, yeah, strange little, complex little, fascinating, dark man. And maybe we'll talk about this in a minute anyway, but like also as he starts to fall for her and his like the level of devotion there. The little thing, the braiding the hair, the bath scene. We won't get
the protectiveness.
He over her hair too.
Oh, guys, I could
he loves her hair.
I could not. There's like one scene where Victor kind of like threatens Lucia early in the beginning, and Santanel is like, "That's enough," and Victor's like, "Bitch, you don't get to tell me when it's enough." And I was like, "Yes, he does. That's his girl."
Yeah. Or the scene where they're like, yeah,
you're not, don't touch her hair.
They're talking about shaving her head, and putting a wig on her, and he's like, no, you will not touch her hair. And
then he just like,
period. He just walks out the room too.
It's so cliche, but I was like, oh, that's my man.
When the scorpion shows up and he's just like, oh, I got you. Like, don't.
He's like, come get on me, little scorpion.
Yeah.
And then,
And then he has like a classic broody line where she's like, why does it listen to you? And he's like, we understand each other. And I'm like, oh, you sure do. You're so right. It's too much. Sorry, I'm being thirsty on Maine. It's crazy. He's a really interesting character. He has a great backstory. I honestly, I wish we get one side quest chapter from him where we get to go with him as he does like the dirty work for his master or whatever. And I loved it. And I wish we had gotten more of that, especially in the beginning, to get me through kind of like the slog of setting up Lucia and her magic and like how she gets into the position she gets in. Yes. I would have loved just random, honestly, no context. I'm following this dude who's like an assassin basically, and he's pulling strings for his master and he's like doing stuff. It would have even been really fun, I think, to see them. There's like another magic user that it's implied that they tried to get but they missed it basically, and he got claimed by another noble. I think that would have been a fun place to start, where it's like Santanel fucks up and it's like he has to deal with the consequences and kind of scramble and try and like figure out what to do. Like that would have been a fun, and then their like storylines converge later on, you know what I mean? But like more. Give me more side.
That's kind of what I've been, not that exactly, but that's what I've been saying is like, I feel like this book should have been longer, but less of the beginning portion, and it should have been more about focused on Santanel and Lucia and their backgrounds and these interesting things that have happened to them, especially Santanel, because he is the most interesting thing about this book. Like, that's true. But we got barely anything of him.
She's right.
That's true.
She's right, and she's.
Can I say as a side note, when we go on the little side quest for him, or that one that you're talking about, Maddie, where he goes and kills that guy, who I guess was yapping or whatever.
He do be yapping.
I think this is when we officially find out that he doesn't feel pain too, and this is such a cool setup. Or sorry, not that he doesn't feel pain. Yeah, that he won't die.
Yeah,
he does.
He does feel pain. Mm-hmm. But when the guy is like stabbing him repeatedly, and he's just there.
Try again.
And then he's like, whoop, and it just does it back to him, and he's like, okay, I just gotta go recover. And like, I'm gonna feel like shit, but I'll be fine. I'll make it.
Yeah, he does it back to him, and then this guy is like a little animal torturer, and he had a bunch of little animals, and so Santanel,
and he
stabs him, and he's like bleeding out on the ground, and then he unlocks all the little animal cages, and he's like, eat up girls, and like I'm like. He doesn't actually say that, like, cringe, but like the vibe. You know what I mean?
But he is eating. That's for sure. Like someone's eating in this scene. It's definitely him. He ate. Like, that's the exact vibe it gave, though. So he was just like,
And then he just walks away. He's like,
dinner
I handled
time.
it. It's so good. It was so. I want more of
It's
it. I
so
want the
good.
badassery. I want,
So good.
Kaylee.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know what this says about me because this is only true in fiction. But like the lack of remorse, I'm like, that's right. I know that's right.
Yes. I love that when characters aren't super moral. Like, obviously in real life, I want people to be moral.
Yeah.
IRL. Don't get me wrong. Like, this does not translate to real life. But when I'm reading a book that's fiction or fantasy, like, yeah, give me people that do not care when they kill
have
someone.
reasons, not necessarily to do what they do, but to feel the way they do. Yeah. Like, he's gone through a lot of shit.
Mm-hmm. He sure has.
Probably shouldn't kill this guy, but he's gone through some shit. He can feel a type of way. Probably shouldn't stab him, but he does it anyway.
Yeah.
I'm here for it.
All right. If we've said everything we need to say about Santenhau,
I could go on for days.
No.
So there's lots of side characters in this book. There's like a lot of side characters. We've got Victor de Paredes, Valentina, Teoda, Fortune, Gracia, Perez, and Jualit, and more. But I think those are the main ones. So personally, like, I really genuinely hated all the side characters, like genuinely. And I think we were supposed to, except for Teoda. She was fine, I guess. But the rest, I was like, could we just have narrowed this list down? Like, for instance, okay, I think we could have totally axed the character of Antonio Perez. Not Victor. Perez. No, we could have axed Perez because, like, Victor was supposed to be the big bad. So it's like, why did we need the second big bad that was like working for the king?
Well,
and
because he
why
was
couldn't
a real
Victor
person,
be
Kaylee, and this is historical fiction.
Well, then why not make Perez Victor?
I don't know.
You know what I'm saying?
Sued for
because
libel.
like
if she makes him mean.
That's
no, you're
true.
Right. You're right.
That's a good point.
It is an unnecessary hoop. So I'm just fucking.
And why did we need Valentina and Jualit? Why couldn't we have merged those two together for like one feminist, kind of messy woman? Like, I guess I don't see why we needed both. I'm just saying, like, there were a lot of characters.
And Jualit, but so the Victor thing though, I definitely agree that. So, and this is what's tricky again, like we've talked about. There's so much in a good way. There's a lot of interesting aspects to the historical context, the religious aspects, the character dynamics. Like, there's just a lot to pack into this one book, right? So, like, part of me gets why we have Victor and we have like this sort of like middleman, because that puts on the pressure for her to perform well. There's like some high stakes, right? Like, Scent and Hell, like, it puts the pressure on him to make sure that she does well. So there's just this like added layer of pressure for people to do well so that up the chain they look good, right? So like, I get that aspect of it, but I did have a hard time following Victor and Perez and everything. I will say that, like, that was one of the hardest struggles I had, was kind of following between that dynamic a little bit. Now for Jualit and Valentina, I love them in that I hated them, and like, I loved to hate. Jualit, serve. I wish she would have come around in some other ways. The scene at the end where she's just like, "Bitch, you're coming over the waterfall or the bridge with me. We're going in." Love that. That ate. Yeah, there's just, I think, because there's just so much, or like with Jualit too, I think it was clear that she wanted Lucia to do well, but it was hard to tell, like, how much of that she wanted for Lucia, how much of that she just wanted for herself, to be a good reflection on herself. And there's like some interesting tension there. I feel like Jualit had some interesting backstory and tension, but it was just, definitely a lot to jump around between. So I think I would have liked some of them more if there wasn't so much to kind of parse through, But.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think so. I like Valentina and Jualit being separate. I think they serve separate purposes, and I think they show different feminisms. like, Welly is kind of giving, I don't know if you guys get Shira Stevens on your TikTok page, but like it's so funny. She is very like, men are for the money. Like, girl, if he's a dusty, like if he doesn't make money, get out of there. Sprinkle, sprinkle. It's all about the, And
Oh,
so
sprinkle,
Welly
sprinkle.
is giving very much like, men are a tool to be used, and we use our femininity to do that. And I think that's like a fun perspective. I almost liked that I wanted her to be a better mother figure to Lucia, but I liked that she was disappointing because it felt realistic. Like, I liked that she knew she should be better, but she like couldn't bring herself to, because she's just like, she's not that girl, And so I like that she was unlikable in that way, and she kind of has her moment. And I think what we could have done less with, I agree with you guys. I don't think Victor and Perez are the problem. I almost think Perez is the problem, specifically because they try and tell us too much about him, and it's because he's a real historical figure. I don't need to know that he, like, they try to tell us, like, the king got Perez in to kill this other guy that we don't know, and then Perez, like, threatened to snitch, and he changed his family crest to say this stuff, and, like, da-da-da. It's too much. It's too much. It's too high level. Like, Victor is the guy that we need to know about, and for a standalone book, like, it was too many levels. We need to clear out the random POVs that we get of, like, Fortune and the king's POV, where it's like, his gout is bothering him today. I'm like, I don't care. And I think that's another instance of, like, the author should know what's going on, but you don't have to tell us. Like, she should know that the king's gout is getting worse, but, like, you don't have to tell me through a POV that's, like, 5 paragraphs of the king being like, owie, my leg. Like, girl, I'm struggling. Like, leave me alone,
Yeah. No, that's a great point. Again, that tension between, like, we have this really good historical setup. It's really interesting stuff, but we also have a lot going on with our fantasy characters. So there has to be some sort of balance between, like, how much we're giving away and how much we're not.
Yeah, the focus was just all wrong.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
I liked Toyota. Is that how you say it? That was the child, right? Child, not child. Yeah. Holy child. Is that right?
She was the orphan, yeah.
The orphan, yeah.
We meet her dad.
No, I mean the movie.
Oh. I was like,
sorry.
As soon as I was like,
I love how you guys both went along with it, and I could tell you didn't know what I was talking about. So,
I wasn't. What?
It's fine. Surely it's fine.
Platformies.
Surely it's fine. I was gonna say, I think because there's so much that happens, when you said that she's an orphan, I was like, oh, maybe she's an orphan, and I just missed that.
Well, she does become orphaned, to be fair. So she's right.
The whole thing with her dad.
Yeah, she's like the reason Kaylee is saying this is because she looks like a child, but she's 38 years old. So, which is a reveal that happens. It's like, oh, surprise.
I love that she gets her bag like that, though. She's like,
yeah.
I'll
say it. I didn't care about her. I thought it was weird that she escaped. I don't know. It was supposed to be like a dub, but I didn't care.
Yeah.
I really
and it
didn't
seemed
care.
phony to me.
Yeah.
Like, I could tell she was, like, not being genuine. I feel like. Maybe it was the voice the narrator was using, but it was like this voice. And it was like, it just sounded so disingenuous.
She was almost a little too pious for me. Like,
when
she's talking to Lucia, they eventually get jailed together, and they kind of meet back up. And they're the 2 women in the jail cell are trying to, like, prep Lucia for, like, what the torture is going to be like. And Toyota is like, like, torture's only temporary. They can only do it once to you. Like, pain is, God, I know I'm serving God's will. And I'm like, okay, so you have no fucking stakes. Like, I don't care then. If you don't care, why do I care?
Yeah.
Like, get out of here then. And then she ends up being the one that escapes. And I'm like, okay, was that God's will? Because you're over here yapping about how I saw myself burn on the pyre. My story ends here. My angel told me. And then, like, well, your angel was wrong. So I'm a little confused.
And she brings it up like 3 times.
Yeah, she never shuts up about it. It's like, I get you have an angel. Yeah. Okay?
Yeah, good for you, girl.
We get it.
We get it. Shut up. You are acting like a child in the fact that you can't withhold any information. You're 38. Please.
Listen, she won't be the only one, okay?
It's also not helping the situation at all. Like, it's not contributing to the situation. She's like, yeah, we're gonna die here, so you might as well not even try anything. And it's like, how is that helping? Like,
and she's like so unbothered. I'm like, I don't know. She was just weird to me. Like, I liked her at the start because she was giving heretic, and I liked that she was serving that for us. And she was like, I don't actually know if I'm a Christian. And I was like, oh, Slay Queen, like, so saucy. And then that was just her whole personality. So I was like, oh, you're kind of boring, not gonna lie. But I don't know. Less men, more women, but not that woman, I guess. That's my feedback.
the other like evil women. So yeah, we have all these characters. We have a lot of this build up, and obviously some of those characters we meet later on in the book. But we spend a lot of time getting to talk about Lucia, and then we finally get this lead up to the actual tornado. So we have these trials and everything. And the main plot of this book is that Lucia gets caught up using her magical powers to unburn a loaf of bread. So that's how this all starts. This burnt piece of bread, she wants to make it not look burnt. And then she basically gets caught. And so then her powers are essentially revealed, and then it's like a spiral from there. And then for Victor, who is San Angel's master, who works with Antonio Perez, who works for the king, yada yada. Like you said, it's complicated. There's a lot going on. So Victor finds out about Lucia, and she basically gets signed up for the torneo, which is a magic competition where the winner gets to work for the King of Spain. So yeah, we got a lot packed in to kind of build up to this. And there's certain things I liked about the build-up. This is when I get to talk about the scene where she's training with San Angel, and it starts with some cool training. Like, she grows this pomegranate tree, and she does some cool stuff with like beans and like making these things grow and multiply and everything. And then one time she snaps and she kills a dude, and literally like he gets spliced up in pieces, and his body's like spread like throughout parts of the house, and it's like half his face is like on the ground, and it's really cool. That part I liked. Her just kind of coming into her powers and stuff. But yeah, a lot going on in this kind of like build up, I think.
Yeah, I liked the training arc. I liked, well, because, Sentinel was there, and we get lots of Sentinel moments, because he's training her. So I loved that. I think it was fun to explore the magic. I kind of wish we'd got more details on what was happening. She has these little, like, they call them songs. I don't know if it's different in the audiobook, but it's, like, one line. So it's more like a little ditty.
Oh, it's different in the audiobook, song. Yeah.
Like, she just has to say one line. What is it like? In
she sings it. She sings it like, imagine Mary Had a Little Lamb, like that tune, and it's like, it's basically like that. It's like she sings them like that, and it's so cheesy and corny. But when I switched to the actual book, I didn't mind it because I could like read it just as a line. Yeah. But when I was like listening to the audiobook, it was so cheesy. I hated it.
Yeah.
Every time, cringe.
In my head, I kind of thought of it as more of like an incantation, I guess would be a way to kind of like make it cooler, yeah, it's just a spell. This is a spell. Like, let's be.
But she's like, Mary had a little.
No, yeah, the audiobook vibe was very much different than what I'm in my head, and I'm just like, yes, witchy bitch. Give us a little spell. But
I think like part of the problem with the lead up, it's the structure thing, like you guys were talking about, but almost a step further, because we have Victor and then Perez and then the king, but we also have Valentina and Marius, and I think that's where it gets annoying, because we have to get through Valentina and Marius to get to Victor, which is where stuff starts happening. And so for me, I'm like, it would be easier. I get why Marius exists. Like, he has a moment in the book where he is like he starts getting redeemed, and then he makes a bad choice because he's but a man, and it's like it's not fun, it's sad, it's like a feminist statement, right? And so I get why he exists. It's like she had some things to say about men who are allies until it's inconvenient, and so I get that. But I'm like, damn, if it was just like Valentina was married to Victor, we could have started this up so much faster, and like
that's exactly what I was saying.
The hierarchy, like it's this extra step that we had to take that I think makes the lead up tough for me, because I'm like, I don't. And then like we know about the cook, we this isn't even relevant, I'm sorry, we know about the cook's son being having a foray with like some theater person that we meet.
That is so random.
It's too much.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. I also thought the like training and stuff, like I don't know, I felt like it was like super rushed, like because that's the most interesting. We wanted more Santanel and Lucia and their dynamic, right? So it's like, why couldn't that have been the bulk of the book leading up to the tornado? True. And then the tornado being like the big event. Like I wanted to be like jumped right into their training, and then we get a little backstory. Here's how they got here, and then they're training, and it's like this big deal. I wanted that, and it felt really rushed to me. It felt like Bardugo spent way too much time on the beginning, and then she was like, "Oh, I got to get to the like meat of the story now." And then she's like, "Oh, here it is," I don't know. And so she like summarizes their training essentially. It's like, oh yeah, so they trained, and then this happened, and they trained, but we didn't get like the actual like in the moment, here's them training together very much. You know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying, and I agree.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, because it takes us into the actual tornado, and like, not to like apples to oranges this to death, but in Serpent of the Wings of the Night, we have a similar idea where it's like main character is recruited into this thing that's like multiple tasks, and it's a similar like split of the book, I think, if you actually mapped it out like page or percentage wise. And in Serpent of the Wings of the Night, the tasks are very far apart. Like, there's a lot that happens in between them. There's weeks that go on. Like, they're big chunks of the book, but the majority of the book is simply, like, task to task to task. And so, because the tornado starts early in the book in terms of just, like, I don't know, we were, like, 20% through or something when we actually get to the tornado, I thought it was going to be more like that. Like, I thought the tasks were going to be more significant. But she's competing against 3 other contestants. The tasks they're so like vibes based. Like, they're just kind of like, all right, we're here, show us what you got. And then they make like a little like illusion. There's like one contestant that's a fraud, so that's like kind of interesting. Like, she doesn't actually have magic, but for the most part, it's a little underwhelming in that the tasks aren't difficult puzzles or, fighting based, which is like, I think the king would need someone that was like more of like a warrior. We get a little bit of it because there's an attack that happens in the second task, trial, whatever. And Lucia has to like problem solve to defeat the like shadow monsters that are there, but it's still just not enough. Like, it falls a little flat for it to be maybe like 65-70% of the book is the tasks.
You think? I thought it was like 10%.
I mean,
I think
it's a big
there's
chunk
a bigger
of the book.
Yeah.
Maybe because I blacked out during this.
Which is fair.
30, 40 maybe. 40.
Really? Well, she doesn't go to jail until the 3rd trial is like over. And she's not in jail for very long. It doesn't matter. It's
true. But
anyway,
nuts and bolts.
But well, I think this brings up an interesting thing too. That like, again, something I love about. I haven't read a ton of Lee Bardugo. I'll be reading more soon. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. We all have different feelings, I think, on Ninth House. But something I do like about Ninth House, something I like about this book, is I love something that's not meant to be like a historical fiction, but it is very much pulling from a real setting that is pulling on very real characters or real secret organizations, whatever the case may be. So something that I think is interesting with these trials, it's hard to know kind of like, because I agree with y'all, sometimes I'm like, okay, I'm not really getting as much out of the trial as I want. But I guess the question is like, what do I want and expect out of these trials because, to your point, I think it's a good point, Maddie, about like the king maybe wanting something more like a warrior. That's actually hard to know because I think at this time they want basically two things. They want like God and money, right? They want miracles. Basically, they want miracles. They want God's sign off to be like, hey, go get money, go plunder, go be rich, right? So, I can see where there might not be a whole lot of combat, and it's more about what sort of miraculous things can you do that A, show that God is on our side, and B, are going to maybe be a useful weapon against our enemies, but not necessarily just like in physical combat, but like what can you do that they possibly could not? So I think it's interesting because I agree with you. Something for me is kind of like lacking in the trials, but it's hard to say what I expect them to be anyway, because like the goal seems a little bit different, but
I agree with you. And I think like, okay, so there's one point where they're talking about Lucia's powers and they're like, she can duplicate stuff. And they're like, oh, imagine she takes one ship and she creates like an armada. And this is important because we get told that like King Philip has taken L after L on the seas. Okay, so it's like that makes sense. But then in the final task, I wish they hadn't said that specifically because then in the final task, Lucia is working with someone and she kind of starts doing this like very performative, like symbolic. She's making a cross in the air or whatever, and then her competitor betrays her and turns it into like a big ship. But he kind of eats her up because he's like, oh, he says something to the effect of like, what do you think the king wants? A symbol or something that can actually help him win? And he turns into a ship. And I'm like, damn, he ate her up because he's right. Like, the king has taken L after L. People have two prophets, maybe not by this point, at least one prophet has predicted that like he's going to lose, he's going to die, like he's panicking, he needs something to turn the tides. And so like I think leveraging what they need is something to turn the tides. Homeboy kind of ate her up with that because
it's true.
It was fake. It was
fake, but calling them on their bullshit about all the religious stuff, which is true of this, I feel like entire time really is like, what we're here for is money and power. So let's call it what it is. Maybe under the guise of a religious blessing so that we don't look evil for what we're about to do, which is exactly what's happening. Exactly. But what we really want is to be powerful. So that's a good point.
And Homegirl has just been growing pomegranates. So she really doesn't do anything that interesting with her magic the whole book, especially in the tourneys. She just is like, I mean, it's cool. It's very symbolic, though. Like, she turns off the lights.
I want to unburn bread, though.
Yeah. I mean, what do you expect? That's what I'm saying. What do you expect, though? Because her whole life, all she's done is, like, unburn bread and, like, mend a dress. So it's, like, suddenly, without all this training that she probably should have had throughout the book, like, how do you expect her to, like, be this huge, magical, powerful being? You know what I'm saying?
Because they tell us every 12 seconds, like, she's so powerful. Like, Santon Hell is like, I can feel the power. Like, Brimmy, she's so powerful. Blah, 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 blah. We're told she's different. So, and I think it comes into, like, she needs to snap and do something different. Like, she needs to be pushed. Yeah. And she wasn't pushed the whole time. She's like,
right. Or their training needed to be more higher stakes or something. Like, yeah, I agree.
And I did like the tension, too, though, that she also had to be mindful of, like, not back to the religious point, right? Like, it was a very fine line because they wanted something that looked like a miracle so that it had like this religious blessing and that people would buy into it, but also like the fine line of like if she did something too edgy then it's going to be taken as like the devil's work, right? So like I did kind of like that aspect that was going on throughout this book because very fine line of like were her powers good or bad for any of the characters. So like you kind of understand that she can't do anything too dark, at least, because then she's just going to be locked up because she's too powerful for them, right? But
I agree, but at the same time, like, I almost feel like that was talked up so much throughout the book because she has so much fear, but when it came down to it, like, the proof, the second task is like a proof of purity or something where they test their faith and make sure their magic isn't from the devil, and I expected that to be intensive based on how scared she was to do the wrong kind of magic and to present the wrong message. And what she does to pass the test is she makes rose petals fell from the sky. And they're like,
Yeah.
That's angelic. And I'm like, that's not, like, push her. Like, if y'all are so fucking crazy about making sure people aren't heretics and stuff, like, and this is the task to weed out people that are going to be weak, like, do something more than a puppet show. It was literally a fucking puppet show.
True.
Bro, what?
Yeah.
T.
I don't know.
You right?
Whatever. It's fine.
So we're like, okay, yeah, the trials are what they are. But are on the sidelines, like our favorite topic, and we've already kind of talked about, but Lucia and Santanel and their relationship. So they obviously get together. We know this is going to happen. We catch the tension, I think, pretty early on. It starts as a slow burn, and then it kind of comes all at once. So they fall in love kind of quickly once they really lean into it. And obviously things are complicated. If Santanel, or he will be released from his tie to De Paredes if Lucia wins the torneo. But like all love stories go, he kind of stops caring about that once he falls in love with Lucia. So that kind of personal motivation is put to the wayside. So yeah, we've kind of already talked about it. I'm very much here for their dynamic. I'm here for this relationship. He is hopelessly devoted, but in a way that's very much like they still challenge each other. There's this kind of I don't even know if I want to call it banter, but tension between them. Their wit, they get each other, and yeah, they quite literally work off of each other. So I was definitely here for it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I like the idea of it, and I liked how it was like really a slow burn, and then it was like really fast all of a sudden, because that pacing felt really right for them. I didn't like how we didn't get a lot of like emotional parts. Like, I don't know. It felt like she really didn't show that much interest in him prior to the night where they sleep together. But that just goes along with feeling like we didn't get insight into their emotions enough. And to me, like, they barely talked and they barely got to know each other or had anything in common, like, other than servitude. Like, I don't know, they just didn't feel compatible to me, and so their love like didn't feel believable, I guess. Like, I didn't buy it. I bought the lust, sure, obviously, but anything beyond that, like, I wasn't buying it. And then suddenly they were like, I'm in love with you, and I don't know, it just felt very sudden.
Two emotionally unavailable.
Feel differently.
Two emotionally unavailable characters. That's when I might be the. What if they kiss?
Yeah, so I actually kind of disagree with both of you, but on different points, which is interesting.
Okay.
And here I go in my hair.
Go for it.
Right. So I don't feel like it was sudden at all. I think it was like a slow and steady burn, and I think we do get almost instantly these little tidbits of them being interested in each other. But I highlighted each time because you can see it change over the pages. So like as I was reading, because instantly, again, Santanel is introduced. I'm there. I'm ready. I know instantly. I'm like, this is my man. So like right away, I was looking for like these change of opinions as they get to know each other, because they kind of like have beef at the start. But it was like the first time they realize they can kind of banter with each other and have wit is like this moment where he touches her and his hand is warm and she's like, oh, your hand is actually warm. And he's like, see, I only look like a corpse. Slay. So that changes the tone. Then she has moments where she says things like, with him, she wasn't afraid, how strange his eyes were, and yet she couldn't deny she liked being the focus of his attention. We get the moment where Santanel is trying to protect her from Victor by giving his master an order. Instead of describing him as like gaunt or ghoulish, she starts describing him more as finely made and like a seashell, and like his eyes aren't strange as much anymore. Like they're just peculiar, they're interesting, they're like, it's these very subtle changes in language But it's all there. Like all that stuff that I named is like within like 100 pages of like the book, and even shorter of like a time of them knowing each other. So like I think it just isn't as overt, because my personal opinion, it's not as lusty, honestly. Like it's not as like Violet and Xaden, like he was so hot, I just looked at his rippling muscles and blah blah blah. It was much more like emotional. Like she has a moment where she's talking about like having like womanly desires, and she's like, a butcher's strong muscled arm coming down to like chop a piece of meat, uh a fine hand grabbing a scorpion off a table or something. And like that was a moment that they had, and it's but she doesn't say Santon Hell, but she names it as something that she finds like very attractive. So it's like little bits that lead up to the moment where they're kind of having this scene, and they're kind of like pushing each other a little bit, and like, you know, oh, I shouldn't, but I will, and I'm gonna do this, and I shouldn't go back to her room, but I will. And it's the same from Santon Hell's POV. So like I actually was feasting on the little tidbits.
Yeah, I didn't think it was overt. So I agree on that point. I don't think it was overt. I think it was meant to be subtle, but that doesn't necessarily mean and this probably goes back to, again, it's all connected stuff of like, I don't really know, and maybe I just missed this. I don't know how long that training period, I think we were kind of saying, we don't really know how long this took leading up to everything. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that the relationship, signs of the relationship were overt. I don't think the signs of them falling were necessarily overt. I think that they were nicely, tastefully sprinkled in. But I do think like if they went from not knowing each other at all, and Lucia has like clearly a lot of other issues to unpack, as does he, it did feel fast. I'm not mad at it. Mm-hmm. I liked it. But for them to go from that to like, or especially for them to be like choosing to like hook up, get together, whatever, with the stakes as they were. I don't know. I feel like it was a fast change from when they met to when that happened. But then again, that might also just be an issue of I don't really know how long that process actually took in the book.
Yeah, and when I say sudden, Maddie, I don't mean there weren't signs. I mean that they went from never even having held hands, hugged, or kissed to sleeping together, which there's nothing wrong with that. Like, that's a very adult thing that happens. But what I'm saying is typically in fantasy books, when there's a slow burn, we get like a passionate kiss, something interrupts it.
Yeah.
And then we get another passionate kiss, and then they sleep together, the third kiss or whatever. That's typically like the formula. And this one was 0 to 100. Yeah. And that's what I meant by sudden. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which I didn't mind it. Like I liked that bit because it was different.
Yeah.
You know, something a little different. I'll take it.
Yeah. It was I also liked, so, and this is kind of like what you said that I disagree with a little bit, Abby, but like the full devotion, I actually didn't find him to be fully devoted. Like he has moments, but he also has doubts almost every time, because he is Lucia is very important to him, but he also has like so much self-preservation that I think he doesn't completely lose his own will and his own perspective in a way that we see in so many other books. And he definitely in the end kind of makes like that big selfless choice. So it's definitely there, like there is devotion, but it's not as black and white. And
it's like a blindness to his own motivations and stuff like that.
Like or he doesn't change completely.
Survival. Yeah.
And I loved that the curse kind of got turned on his head, where it was like, you have to give up your most important, the thing that you value the most, and it's freedom. And he's like, it was, but it's not anymore. Yeah. Like, I loved that they were kind of tied together in this like tragic loop that no one could have predicted like how it was actually going to play out, even though all the pieces were there. This is an example for me of like a curse or a riddle that was actually done really well, compared to like ACOTAR, where it was just kind of like thrown in the end and it didn't really fucking matter and it was stupid. This curse actually had twists and tricks and like felt sneaky and punishing, and I liked that about their relationship, because it like heavily influences like how the end plays out.
Yeah, good points.
T.
Okay, so let's go to the ending. So basically this book ends with Lucia and Santanel being taken by the Spanish Inquisition. So kind of looping back to that setting that we talked about in the beginning. And they are eventually, after being like, what's the word? Jailed for a while, they are burned at the stake. Except Lucia does this spell where she like transports them back to not back to she transports them both to Valencia. So their bodies are like never found in the pyre, and like it's this whole thing where they're like that just proves that they're devilish or they had ties to the devil, but actually it was that she had like transported them, which was really cute. So predictable. I called this like them being transported thing. I called that like as soon as we learned about this spell early on in the book, because they had like so much emphasis on the spell, and it's like they had a whole conversation about it. So the like the hints were there, you know what I'm saying? But I still loved it. I thought it was really cute. It was a good ending.
You're smarter than me though, because I will say I didn't call that. What I thought was gonna happen was, and I loved it. I ate it up. My notes in this just said the ending ate. That's really all I have to say. But what I thought was gonna happen was just that this was gonna be the moment when she was going to truly snap, and like that they might actually really die. It might be the end. And that she was gonna kill what's his face, the other dude in the trials, and just basically like give her enemies, like give them hell in some sort of overt or subtle way that was gonna follow them. So no, you were real on.
That would have been good.
That.
I like to want her to have like a self-destruct moment where she perishes, but she takes out people with her.
Yeah.
I did really like though that like the amulet talisman thing came back, because I didn't expect that, and I didn't realize that's what Fortune had going on. So I loved that she used that to actually get over the hurdle to be able to do the teleportation spell thingy, rather than just like she suddenly has the strength to do it. But then also like it punishes him because now he can't. He sucks. Now L, you're bad. L plus ratio. Like, So, but I didn't want him to be sliced, honestly. But I was like, that's fine. I guess losing his.
Being a loser forever is also fine. Whatever.
Yeah. I did feel like the jail moment was long. There was a little too many confessions. There's a little too much back and forth between her and Santanel, like trying to out scheme each other. It was fine. It was just a little too much. I don't know.
Yeah, it was a lot of back and forth.
Yeah. And for the moment at the actual pyre.
Yeah, and then the actual ending, I thought it was really cute. I liked it. But I don't think they should have been immortal. I think Santanel should have to go through character development to no longer be scared to die.
Yes.
He needed to accept that was like a reality. He's had 500 years for some character growth. It's time, baby girl. I wanted them to get old together.
Gotta unpack by that point.
Yeah. A little bit more stirring between them two. They didn't really have too much conflict towards the end. I say that. They had good conflict. I shouldn't say it that way. They had good conflict. They had good arguments. Like, I really liked their very natural opposing, like, you're not telling me everything. Well, yeah, but it's, like, for this valid reason, whatever kind of thing they had going on. But I wanted a little bit more stirring. I wanted a little bit more jealousy. I wanted a little bit more food in the end. Other than that, it was good. Fair. It was good.
Fair.
It's cute. Okay. Well. It's time for everyone's favorite part of the pod, our hot takes and pour-overs. So, I'll start. My hot take is that the magic system brings this book down. I think it's too vague. I think too many times we ask a why and we just get like a it's God's will sort of answer, which for me as a reader, like, just isn't enough to understand what's going on with the magics. I don't really understand the difference between the powers and why some people can do this and some people can do that and how it works. And I think maybe more importantly, I don't think there's enough consequences for the magic being used. Like, we have that one moment where she pushes herself too far and, she almost dies, she kills someone else. But that's really it, and that's in the beginning of the book. And I think I needed more physical exhaustion, or I don't know, something not going as planned. I just needed more of that. She was a little bit too measured in her magic, for me to like care about using the magic. It was still too frilly-nilly for me. Oh.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
I agree.
Yeah.
And then for my pour over, simply, I have Santan Hell. Like, I will be continuing to think about this man.
Yes.
I loved it. I ate it up. I want more. I would like, I don't know. Can we do like a novella that's just, him 200 years ago or something? Like, I just need a little bit more food. I'm a little hungry.
That'd be a good novella. I could see it.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it.
Okay. My hot take, I've already talked about it, and hardly a hot take, but the pacing in this book was just so off. Like, there's too much focus on the background, the politics, and yet the book wasn't long enough. And it's like, it was just, the actual meat of the story was hardly focused on, in my opinion. And it was just all wrong anyway. I don't know. It was just all wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's fair.
Moreover, honestly, low key, the pirate at the end of the book, because where he going? Like, I want to know. I want to know what. Maybe it can be a novella about him.
Bruh, I did not expect you to talk about the pirate. I love that.
It was just kind of thrown in there. I want to know what his like second chance was like,
Yeah, what's he up to?
That's so real.
Yeah. Also, okay, wait. Did I miss something? So why does Santan Hell turn into like the dust?
Because he's away from Victor.
She doesn't. Oh,
so he dies.
Right.
Victor,
so he dies, but she
broken.
You bring him back.
Yeah, but she just can heal him.
Ah, right. Right.
Which would probably be really painful to turn into dust, but
yeah,
I would imagine.
Yeah,
maybe it's opposite.
She should have to pay a cost for doing that level of magic every time.
Yeah,
because also doesn't
every day
tell her like resurrection is one thing that like you can't fuck with as a magic user. Like,
yeah, that seems like a big. Also, what if they like get into a fight and she's just like, he'll be fine for an extra day.
Right, like it's a cost that she should be willing to pay, but there should be more of a cost that's explained because it's a little too. The ending was a little too sweet.
Sorry, I thought about this because the pirate. I was like, I forgot that connection for a second, and I was like, did he just like run down the street and then boom into dust? Like, was he this poor pirate? And I was like, oh no, that's just
it's only Santano.
A novella for him too.
Yeah, I'm down for that.
Well, let's see. My hot take, we've already kind of talked about it. I had one about the trials being meh, but we went through that. So my bigger hot take is just that, yeah, sis should have snapped more. I want to see someone get hurt. What about like Valentina's dumbass husband?
Mario's?
Doesn't he? Yeah, at the end he kind of like, yeah, she's like, hey, help her, and he doesn't, and he's just a waste of space, man, who kind of ends up being a problem. Yeah. And he has a moment where he gets a little bit better, and then he doesn't. It's like, yeah, I don't know. Let him be caught in the crossfires. I don't know. Turn him to dust. Turn him to slice his face in half. I don't know. Like, yeah, somebody. So I feel like someone else should have been caught up in her wrath, but we've kind of already talked about that. And then pour over. Yeah, once again, me just morbidly obsessed with that scene where she cuts up that guy. The half of the face on the floor, y'all. That's nuts.
And know what Abby's into now.
A true.
Huh? I love a gory scene in one of these books that's like memorably different, different kind of gore.
I love I loved the like anywhere but here, and then it's like, okay, we'll transport you to like the floor below, but it only transports half. Like, that was such a fun, like,
that's so cool.
The whole book was very like, you get what you asked for. Be more specific about what you're asking for, and that's what I liked. Is like, hey, anywhere but here. And that's the kind of thing
I want to see more of, like spells gone wrong, and we're gonna call them spells because they are like things gone wrong with improper training, with her being frustrated with like that just boiling over. Like, I want to see more shit go wrong like that. But
Exactly.
I don't remember that one.
The cost, the price of the magic system.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So last part, let's talk about our ratings and favorite parts. So I'll go first. Rating for me was a flat 3 out of 5. No dot anything. The writing was good. That's why I gave it 3. Yeah, I've already talked about my qualms with it. My favorite part was the bath scene. If you know, you know. That's all I'm going to say.
We know.
Yeah, for me, I ended up really loving this book. I would probably give it like a 4.5 out of 5 if we're being like super specific, because I think there was enough that could have been tweaked to make it better, but like in general, like I feel like my complaints are not that big. I thoroughly enjoyed it, chapter 10 onward. I was riveted. So I really liked it. My favorite part is the like first big conflict that we get for Lucia and Santanel, which is like the argument after she reveals on accident, on purpose, that she like had snooped through his belongings and like read his letters, and he's like, I didn't know you could read Latin, and she's like, yeah, there's some shit you don't know about me, bitch, because I don't know about you, and he's like, well, why do you have to know about me? And it just felt like a very real argument. It was like a really good way for them to start learning about each other and kind of take their relationship past surface level. So I love a good real argument instead of like these fake little sissy arguments we get all the time in romantic-y books. So I'm always there for that.
Agreed. Yeah. I like that too.
No, that was a good one. So for my rating, I'm gonna do like a 3.8, maybe a 4. This one grew on me as well. Yeah, same stuff. Definitely had some, not issues, but just I think there's so much to pack in to a single book, so it was kind of hard to balance that at times. But other than that, it grew on me a lot, particularly in the end. Yeah, interesting one, definitely unique. So my favorite part, different things. I did again really like the scorpion scene. He's a Scorpio. He probably fucking is. And for sure, well, like for multiple reasons, but for sure. Yeah, I also like the pomegranate scene where like, I don't know if it's my favorite, but he gives her the pomegranate and she's like, I need you to turn around. While I eat this pomegranate, I was like, oh. But yeah, just some little tiki moments like that. But
it's good food, Brant. It's good food.
It is much to think about.
Yeah.
That's it.
All right. If everybody has said their piece, that is all the tea that we have on The Familiar. Next time, we're going to be continuing the Leigh Bardugo trend with Six of Crows. I'm so freaking excited. This is like my favorite book of all time. I'm really excited to bully Kaylee and Abby into reading it. I'm nervous that they're going to hate it. And if so, this may be the end of the pod because I don't know if I can survive. So
last episode.
Definitely tune in for that and watch our friendship dissolve.
Tea.
You can also stay up to date with the latest tea on Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube by following us at Spill the Novel Tea on all of the things. And while you're there, let us know. Did this book live up to the hype for you? Was the pacing too much? Did you DNF? It was a very DNF-able book, so I don't blame you, but it's worth finishing. Let us know your hot take. Which scene did you like, the bath scene or the pomegranate scene? Which one had you kicking, giggling your feet? And anyways, that's our boy, our new boy. We will see you next time.
Bye.